up, everybody? Welcome back to MLB Swing for the Fences here on Father's Day, Sunday, June 15th, talking today's 11-game baseball slate, joined as usual on Sunday morning by Third and Schlong. Bryce, how you doing on this Father's Day Sunday morning?
I'm doing well. Mateo and I had a fun morning after the show. He has a birthday party to go to.
Oh,
so that's pretty much how we're celebrating.
That works. Yeah, neither of us are fathers. And, I did tweet before jumping on this show. I don't know if you agree with me or not, Bryce, but it's kind of demeaning when someone tells you Happy Father's Day because you're a dog dad. It's like, I don't have any kids. I can barely take care of myself, and they wish you Happy Father's Day anyway. It just rubs me the wrong way. But, maybe I'm just getting a bitter old man here, turning 40 soon. But I don't know if you feel the same way, Bryce, as a fellow pseudo father, dog dad. What say you, Bryce?
I mean, the dogs can be a little bit of work, but I mean, it's nothing like having a kid, obviously.
Exactly.
It's whatever. I mean, I'm just glad we don't have any kids out there that we don't know about. Knock on wood. I'm not going to wake the tail off here if I actually
already. I hope I continue to not know about them. Yeah, that's all good.
Yeah, no unexpected life surprises at this age.
No, don't need those. And we got Uncle T. More important than Father's Day, it's Uncle's Day. Uncle T, greatest uncle in the world. Terry Niehaus, love to see it in chat supporting us. And yeah, Uncle T, we might go back to Yuri Perez today. We'll get to him and the rest of the slate. We're talking a little bit of pre-show, Bryce, a little bit of a strange slate. We're in the middle of June, but not that many great hitting spots. And it seems like there should be, right, here on Sunday. I mean, it's not that it's a loaded slate necessarily for pitching, but just not that many spots that look great to me. So we'll try to break it down, try to get on some winners as we go through this show. And we do have a little bit of a later start, at least 1:35 Eastern time. So hour and a half from now, the slate will start. So plenty of time to talk through these games, try to find the winners, get in the Discord, all that good stuff. Let's get to it, Bryce. We'll start off in Atlanta. And I do think we have perhaps rightfully the chalk stack here with the Atlanta Braves, who have kind of come to life over the last couple of weeks, which, of course, has coincided with the return of Ronald Acuna, who, man, I think kind of quietly looks like his old self. I mean, he's hitting nearly 400, 7 home runs already. It seems like he just came back, absolutely tearing the cover off the ball. Is Acuna good to see him back? And yeah, this Braves team starting to show the power that we expected from them. So they get Austin Gomber here. Obviously, Rockies don't have any good pitchers, including Gomber, who will make his first 2025 start today. Tough spot, I think, for Gomber, who's not really any good anyway. I think he only got a couple of rehab starts, got up to 69 pitches. I wouldn't expect this to go well for him. You never know. Of course, it's baseball, but I do think the Braves look pretty good here, as does Grant Holmes. And I'm not really a Grant Holmes believer, but against this Rockies team, man, almost any competent pitcher, which Grant Holmes certainly is, has to be in play. The enormous strikeout rates. We did see Bryce Elder, who was a popular play on Friday night, not work out. But then, of course, Spencer Strider yesterday struck out 13 Rockies. So, yeah, I think Grant Holmes in play here. The Braves certainly in play. All Atlanta for me in this one, Bryce. What are you doing with Braves and Rockies to kick off the slate?
Yeah, I mean, it's a large slate. I have no interest in the Rockies offense. Atlanta is pretty clearly the top stack on the slate. And there's not tons. We were kind of talking about this pre-show. There's not tons of great hitting spots today. So in a spot where I would normally like to look for a bit of leverage on Atlanta, I'm probably just going to play them, 30 to 40% of my stacks or something like that will be either Atlanta, large or small. I mean, you can play them anywhere.
Well, they're going to be the most popular, right? Looks like they're going to
by far. I don't think anyone's going to be. I think it's going to be pretty spread out after them. We'll get to some. They're not cheap. We'll get to some cheaper offenses. I do prefer the top of the Braves lineup, obviously, and that starts with Acuna. I think Riley is going to be very popular at 4.8K today too. But I mean, they're great plays here against Gomber. So I don't really think you can poke tons of holes in them. Grant Holmes is a little bit more interesting of a decision, but I'm inclined to just kind of play him along with everyone else and their mother against the Rockies. So I expect him to be my highest owned pitcher here. He provides you a lot of salary relief to where you can spend up. At another one would kind of be like the preferred build, but there are some cheaper pitchers here and some decent like alternatives. I don't really see like decent alternatives for like Atlanta bats.
I'm with you. Yeah, our guy Peel Alley, any bullpen worse in Colorado, they're up there. They're for sure a bottom 3 bullpen. And yesterday, they used essentially the whole bullpen pitched for not the Rockies. I'm thinking of a different team. But nevertheless, there's just no good relievers there. So you're going to get, 4 or 5 innings of Gomber most likely. And then, 4 or 5 innings of Rockies bullpen, which usually works out pretty well. So, the chalk stack, especially when you get like outside of, it's not in Coors Field, obviously, in 11-game slate. I think sometimes the ownership can get out of hand, but I do agree with you. At least on paper, they do look like clearly the best upside option do the Braves. And I think the ownership is certainly going to reflect that. So have to make that decision. I'm with you though. I do lean right now, at least to play them unless we can find some other offenses that we like close to as much for lower ownership. 11 games to talk about. So maybe we'll get there eventually. Let's get to Miami and Washington. Yuri Perez going for Miami. I did play and recommend him in his last start. Looked awesome through 2 innings against Pittsburgh, unraveled in the 3rd inning. I think he threw like 40 pitches, walked a couple guys, and then didn't come back out for the 4th, which made sense given his first start back. But I did like what I saw overall from Perez, who I do think, as I did before his last start, that he's going to be good for the Marlins. I think he's at least interesting here at 6,700. Probably can't expect more than 80, 85 pitches, but could be enough against the Nationals at that price point. Going to give you, really, really good stuff. He's touching 100 with the fastball. I thought he looked healthy. Just didn't work out in that 1 inning. So I do like Perez some here. And Mackenzie Gore as well, pitching for the Nationals. He's been fantastic. Really just start after start with Gore. The strikeouts are always there, and he gets the Marlins here. Obviously, a good matchup for Mackenzie Gore. Wind blowing in Washington, D.C., as it is most places today. So pretty good pitching environment as well. Mostly pitching for me here, but where are you at, Bryce, on Miami and Washington here?
100% agree on pitching here. I think Gore is him and Holmes would be like my preferred pairing and probably like the chalkiest one. I think it's a really good spot for Gore. I do prefer him to Wheeler and Fried up top. We'll get to those other 2 expensive options here in a bit though, but Gore is my preferred option there. Perez, I think is like a Holmes alternative. That's like at least has upside, maybe not in terms of pitch count, but definitely in terms of strikeouts to get there. I think he's my preferred like cheap pitching option today.
I do think he's the best cheap option, Perez, that I see.
There's a couple other ones you could potentially throw out like Rhea, but I don't really love that. Kumar Rocker, basically anyone is in play against some of these bad offenses. But
sure.
I think Perez has more upside, like as an arm, obviously. So I will lean towards arm talent over matchup here and go with him. Don't have tons of interest in bats here. If you wanted to play like some Nationals, like 3-mans, I don't think it's the worst idea. Like Perez can get in trouble, walk people. And, if you're doing that, these guys can run a bit. So like Wood and Abrams, and probably Call would probably be my favorite options here from that.
Yeah, I do think this is one. Oftentimes a cheap pitcher, they're cheap for a reason, right? So you can play the other side. We both like Perez a little bit, but I'm with you. I do like that national stack. Perez, just the one start, he didn't give up any steals, but last year, actually way back in 2023, 11 steals in 90 innings. And I did watch that first start because I played him. And it looked like they were trying to run on Yuri Perez. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Nationals got going on the base pass today. Maybe a sneaky stack. I don't think they'll be super highly owned or anything like that. So I like the Nationals not playing Marlins bats. And yeah, Mackenzie Gore. What was your verdict on him? I mean,
he's my favorite spend up.
Yeah.
I do prefer him to Wheeler, but it's pretty close between those two, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense to me. I don't think not. It's still the Marlins. It's one of those matchups where I do think the Gore's going to go deep. The strikeouts, though, could, at least on paper, be somewhat lacking, but I still do agree with you. I think he is a good way to spend up if you are on a cheaper stack, especially. Let's get to the Angels and the Orioles in Baltimore. We've got Scott Blewett is going to start, and it's going to be Cade Povich, who pitches likely the majority, probably 4 or 5 innings from Povich, likely coming in the second inning, I would guess, with him. 6,600 against the Angels. I think you could do it. I certainly like Yuri Perez a little bit better, but Povich, maybe not the worst option. And then Kikuchi going for the Angels. We kind of know what to expect from him coming off a really, really strong start against the A's. And a pretty good matchup here against, honestly, a light-hitting Orioles team that just this lineup, man, it does not strike a ton of fear into you. And I think Kikuchi at 7,400 could be a sneaky or somewhat sneaky play. What are you doing, Bryce, with Orioles and Angels here?
Yeah, I mean, I like Kikuchi a good amount here. He would be my favorite direct option to get off some Holmes chalk.
Yeah.
You get Adley out of the lineup, and this Baltimore lineup just looks super, super rough to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just looking at it, like Jackson Holliday's not in the lineup either. O'Hearn's hurt. I know they're all lefties, but it still helps to have quality hitters out of the lineup. I mean,
there's like nothing in the lineup to fear for Kikuchi, really. I mean,
there's some decent right-handed. Like I think Westbrook's a decent hitter, but like who's the best hitter? Like Henderson, obviously. I mean, after that, it's bad. Like they don't have many bats to be scared of. So I'm expecting to be overweight on Kikuchi, and he'll probably be one of my bigger buys at pitcher here. Povich, I didn't mind, but I'm not a huge fan of pitching guys behind openers, and I'm not going to recommend every cheap pitcher on this slate. So I'll probably just pass on him. Angels bats, I think are in play, but they're not like my favorite options on the slate or anything. Would prefer like Trout, Ward, Neto type of 3-mans as opposed to full stacks. But I do think you can get to some of them today.
Yeah, the opener thing with Povich, I'll use those pitchers sometimes, but I need to just dig in myself and do my own research and be really sure that they're going to come into the game. You know what I mean? There's no worse sweat than is your supposed long reliever going to get into the game or not. And just be honest, I just didn't have the time this morning to dig in and make sure.
I do it more on smaller slates or slates where you're really searching for pitching too. Yeah. And this is definitely not one of those slates. I think the pitching's pretty strong today. So, I mean, you can play him if you want. I had him in my pool before he was announced as a non-opener, but I was also only getting 5%. So, I think that's just a pretty easy on.
I mean, even in the same game, I just think Kikuchi's a way better play for 8.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm getting 30% Kikuchi, which should be a pretty big buy on the slate.
Yeah, I'm in on Kikuchi here. Maybe my favorite overall pitcher on the entire slate, given this Orioles lineup, man, just looks absolutely brutal. So
it's atrocious.
Yeah, really, really bad. So in on Kikuchi, probably not going to get to Povich. I do think he's an okay play. but I just don't know if you need to do it on this particular slate. What about those Angels bats? Any interest there against?
Yeah, I liked him more as three-mans type of deal, but you know, I do think that you could play them as five-mans. I didn't end up with a ton of them here. Let's see. I'm gonna have to rerun some of this stuff because I ran all my
Part
teams.
of the hard part with them is it's the right-handed power that you would want, but that's a brutal park for trying to hit home runs out to left field. So I think they're fine.
Prefer them as three-mans. They're not going to be like a big buy for me on this slate or anything.
Yeah. I think Angels, Baltimore, Kikuchi looks like the play. I think he should have a strong game here, most likely. Yankees and Red Sox up next in Fenway, going to be in the mid-60s. Kind of mild weather most places on this slate, but we will get Max Fried going for the Yankees. He's been awesome all year long. And actually, I think kind of a sneaky good matchup for Max Fried here. I think he's an interesting play at 10K. I do prefer him over Mackenzie Gore. I think it's close between Fried and Wheeler, but I like Fried a little bit, even against this Red Sox team in Fenway. And then Brian Bayo going for the Red Sox. It's been okay this season, but I do think this is another spot where maybe not quite as strong a spot as the Braves, but I do think this Yankees team sets up well against Bayo. You've got 4 lefties in the top 5: Grisham, Rice, Bellinger, Jazz, Chisholm, and then, of course, Aaron Judge in the middle of all hitting third. So that top 5 for the Yankees are expensive, but they look good to me against Brian Bayo. They're another team that I think has significant upside on a slate where it's hard to find it. So, yeah, all Yankees for me. I like Fried. I like this Yankee stack. I don't think I'm playing any Red Sox at all. What are you doing, Bryce, with Yankees and Red Sox here?
Definitely like the Yankees side of this game. We had talked about what a strong pitching slate it is, and when Fried is up there with some of these other guys, the top end is pretty strong. I do prefer Gore to Fried here a bit personally, but I think that's more just being at home against Miami as opposed to on the road against Boston. But it's not like this Boston lineup is something that you really have to worry about that much.
Yeah.
I mean, their best hitters are both left-handed.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's a pretty good spot for Fried. Maybe he goes overlooked a little bit.
I hope he goes overlooked because I'm playing him. I'm playing all 3 of the top pitchers pretty close together in terms of ownership. So kind of whoever becomes the chalk is the one I'm rooting for the least. Not going to do anything with Boston bats here. Yankees bats, I think you can play against Bayo. I'm never going to be totally fading these guys, but they should come in. They're not cheap. I do think they're decent, Atlanta alternatives. Just in terms of pricing and upside. So, yeah, it is. Who did we get in here today that I wasn't expecting? Escara Perez, and looks like no Goldschmidt, but that's kind of whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's Yankees are as always a top heavy team. You always want their expensive bats.
I think you want the top 5 for the Yankees if you're playing.
Yeah. I think kind of anything down to Dominguez is fine. But I do like playing end of the order stacks or wraparound stacks, and the Yankees just aren't a team you want to do with it. So, I would, if you're playing them in 5-mans, I think that's totally fine. I think there's decent pitching options. I would do a Kikuchi, Holmes pairing would be able to fit something like that. Or, if you wanted to get a little bit more wild, you could go to Perez or some of the other cheap guys we've mentioned. But yeah, I think the Yankees should come in around 15% for me, which probably makes them a slight buy here.
Yeah, makes sense. And just in general on this slate, I mean, anybody watching, if you got a strong lean for whatever reason on an offense that's going to do work, I would prioritize that over getting the pitchers that you want in. I think there's a lot of different pitchers that you can get away with today. But if you get that offense right, I think you're going to really set yourself apart. So maybe the Yankees are the answer to that question. I do like them quite a bit against Brian Bayo, who does give up just a lot of base runners. And then, of course, the Yankees have power to take advantage of that if it does go that way. Let's get to Toronto and Philadelphia. We've got Zach Wheeler, Jose Barrios, two right-handers here for the Blue Jays and the Phillies. Another game where it's going to be cooler than cooler than you would expect. 65 degrees in Philly, some wind blowing in, so it won't play quite as hitter-friendly as Citizens Bank Park typically does. Zach Wheeler, start after start for this guy, getting the job done. I would expect nothing less here, but I guess you could expect less strikeouts based on the Toronto Blue Jays lineup. So I do have Wheeler behind both Gore and Fried. So I love Zach Wheeler. I play him a lot, but if you're playing even 1 to 3 lineups, I don't think he's the best option today. So I'm going to look elsewhere myself. And then not a ton of interest in Jose Barrios. Just think there are better ways to go. So Wheeler, again, I expect him to get, 15, 20 fantasy points, but I do think the strikeouts could be hard to come by. And honestly, I'm kind of mostly off this game in general. What are you doing, Bryce, with Philadelphia and Toronto here?
It's pitchers again, or mainly just Wheeler here for me. Probably a game I will likely be under on. Wheeler, probably going to get to like 25% Wheeler. He's super expensive at $11K. But there are some cheap pitchers to be able to fit him. I just kind of like playing all these expensive pitchers today. And we've already mentioned who our favorites are of the group. But yeah, I don't really want anything to do with Toronto hitters. Philly hitters, I don't think I was getting a lot here. Let me check. Not really. A couple 3-mans of like Schwarber Turner type of deal, like +1 would be my preferred way to attack it. But we'll get to some bats here, hopefully for you guys shortly. But as you can see, why Atlanta might be so popular, there's just not tons to love for hitting on the slate.
It's just hard to make the case for a lot of these teams. So we're not going to make the case if we don't believe it ourselves. And just that type of slate, I will say, Schwarber looks like an awesome one-off play here. If you've got the salary to afford him, don't love the Phillies in general, but certainly happy to have as much Kyle Schwarber as I can get specifically. And then, of course, Wheeler, a pretty decent play if you've got the salary to spend, which you might, because I do think cheap stacks are certainly in play on this slate. Tampa Bay and the New York Mets are up next. We've got Griffin Canning going for the Mets. Talked a lot on his last start about him kind of pitching, over a little bit out over his skis, just not as good as his metrics would indicate. Did have a little bit of a rough start against the Nationals, but I do think it's a pretty good spot for him against this Rays team that does strike out a lot. You get him out of that stadium down in Tampa to Citi Field and, Pitchers Park. I think Canning seems pretty safe with a little bit of upside here. So some interest, not any interest really in Shane Baz for me, who I'm not a huge believer in. We've seen a ton of blow-up starts from him. I do think the Mets are somewhat interesting against Shane Baz. Wouldn't be shocked if he struggled here. So mostly Mets for me in this one, but honestly not that exciting of a game overall. What are you doing, Bryce, with Rays and Mets?
Yeah, just another game that I'm not really interested to play anyone. And, there's not even like a pitcher I love in this game.
Yeah.
I think I was getting like 2 to 3% Baz. I think that's fine to just click off on this slate. Canning, I do have a little more interest in. I'd probably around 10% seems right for Canning here in this spot. I do think he has some strikeout upside in this matchup. We talked about not loving Baz, but I also don't really love the Mets offense here. I have a couple 5-mans, but just they seem to really be struggling to me right now. And I haven't really been playing a lot of Mets, so I don't think I'm going to go to them as like kind of an alternative offense much here.
Makes sense to me. They seem Yeah, I mean, I do think they're a fine way to go, but just a little bit overpriced, right, for what you're getting compared to, I think, the Braves and the Yankees in particular. So Mets are fine. Wouldn't be shocked to see them have a big performance, but I do have them, at least in terms of the expensive offenses, behind both the Braves and the Yankees. Let's get to the next set of games here at 2:10 Eastern Time. Minnesota and Houston is who we'll talk about first. Simeon Woods Richardson going for the Twins here, and it'll be lefty Brandon Walter going for the Astros, who it's actually pitched pretty well. Just 2 starts he's made, but they've both been pretty good. I don't think it's going to be long-term success for Walter, but has looked solid so far. I was looking at this Twins team. This top of the lineup looks interesting. All those righties, Buxton, Jeffers, Correa in particular, I think are interesting plays against Walter. What are you doing, Bryce, with Twins and Astros here?
Kind of a game that I don't mind bats in. So, if you can find a reason to play bats today, I think you do. Neither team is super expensive here. Like, they're both very cheap outside of Buxton, so you can kind of do whatever you want. Astros lineup is kind of disappointing here without Walker in there, but Victor Caratini is your fourth hole hitter. That's not really a team that screams upside to me. I'd probably prefer, once again, more 3-mans here, but I'll have a bit of each one. And, since the teams aren't expensive, I think it's pretty easy to get to like the better top of the order type of hitters, like Buxton, Jeffers +1, Pena, Altuve, plus probably one of the catchers. And, I think Jake Myers is in play as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Twins are cheap. Buxton, I think, is the top option there, but that top 3 for the Twins, Buxton, Jeffers, Correa, makes a lot of sense. Willie Castro hitting 4th. He's cheap as well, didn't you? Boyden's boy, Ty France in the 5-hole. Yeah, Twins look decent. 2 good bullpens here, though, so I don't know if we'll necessarily see a 5-man winner from either of these teams, but I do think they're both in play. And like you said, it's a slate where we're searching for offenses to play, and I do think you can go to either of the Twins or the Astros if you want to go in that direction. Let's go to A's and Royals up next. 2 lefties here. Noah Cameron pitching for the Royals. Came back to earth a little bit against the Yankees. 6 earned runs over 5 2/3 innings. Still did strike out 6 through 102 pitches in that game. And if you're a Noah Cameron believer, or for the people out there watching that are, it's a good spot for him against this Athletics team that does have a lot of swing and miss, especially in the back half of the lineup. We've seen this from several teams today, but this A's lineup, pretty rough. So I could see Cameron having a good game. 9,400 for him still feels like a lot. I don't know if I'll get there, but I do like this matchup for him at least. And then Jeffrey Springs on the other side, in my opinion, not really in play in this slate, but he is coming off a very strong outing against the Angels. 8 strikeouts, no walks in that one, 20 DraftKings points. But I don't think this is a spot to use $6,500 Jeffrey Springs. What say you, Bryce, on Royals and A's?
I really kind of want to click on Cameron in this spot. It's just a super watered down lineup, but I'm not getting there tons.
If he goes cheaper, I'd definitely use him. But
yeah, for sure, 9,400 is a little hard to click. I have 7% on my updated run that I just did here after we got all the lineups. So I assume that's where I'm going to fall in, and that's more of not like a me not liking him thing. It's like a me like not projecting him high enough to get like up to the levels of like the 3 stud pitchers on this slate, or like not be enough to also like overtake to make like the optimizers and simulations and stuff want to spend over like Kikuchi or Holmes or like some of these other cheap guys we have. So he just kind of falls into like a zone where he's getting played if like I need to play someone at that price. Don't really have any interest in the athletic backs against him. I do like this Royals spot. They're cheap. I think they have upside against Springs here. I think Witt is overall probably the second or third best hitter on the slate. It's like Acuna, Judge, and him. I think are pretty obvious, like top three, like overall hitters. So, I think Casey personally plays better as 3-mans, but I'm getting a decent amount of 5-mans here as well. Garcia leading off, I think is super nice. Him, Witt, and then probably like a Mark Canha type of deal would be like my preferred way to attack it. Perez is super cheap at catcher, as he always is. He's just been so bad. It's kind of hard to make that click, but 3,200 hitting fourth is a pretty good spot for him.
Yeah, only thing I'll add on the Royals, I think clearly the two best bats here, Garcia and Witt, at the top of the lineup. Obviously, hitting first and second is nice, and then also Springs has given up 16 stolen bases, 16 for 16 are base runners, and those are the two guys that would run anyway, Garcia and Witt. So that 2-man stack up there, if you want to take it beyond that, that's fine. But I do think a pretty strong, third base, shortstop, Michael Garcia, Bobby Witt makes a ton of sense against the lefty Springs. Both those guys should be running if they get on base as well. So extra boost.
I'm getting a ton of Witt. Shortstop's pretty weak. He's one of my absolute favorite one-offs as well. I
makes sense with the Braves or Yankees, right? They don't have great shortstops that you're trying to get in there.
Yeah.
So, makes sense with Bobby Witt. I think he'll probably be in my core as well, which, of course, will be up on Run Pure Sports after the show. Let's get to these last three games, St. Louis and the Milwaukee Brewers. This one at American Family Field in Milwaukee. We've got Miles Mikolas going for St. Louis. Got actually roughed up in his last start, 6 earned runs, 9 hits allowed over 5 innings against the Blue Jays. And then Quinn Priester throwing from the right side for Milwaukee. He's got some pretty severe splits where he's been hit really hard by left-handed bats. Unfortunately, no Nootbaar in the lineup, but Donovan, Burleson, Gorman all look pretty good to me. What are you doing, Bryce, with Cardinals and Brewers here?
It's kind of a watered down Cardinals lineup today compared to like what you normally see out of them. I don't think Priester's like the absolute worst option, but he's going to come in probably around 5% for me. I prefer these other cheap pitchers that we've already discussed here. Likely not going to get to many Cardinals bats in this spot. Sorting here by team. Cardinals. I think I have 2 5-man stacks, and that's it. So, not a team I'm going to recommend here. I'd be a little more interested on the Milwaukee side. I do think it's a decent spot here. I've been playing guys against Mikolas all season, and I just think he's like a pretty dead arm, pretty much a dead arm at this point. Mm-hmm. So, I kind of like the Brewers here. I think they're decent alternatives. I'm playing them between 5 and 10% pretty much across the board, and definitely prefer the top of the order, probably all the way down to Turang at 6 would be my preferred Brewers stack, and then just take out whichever one doesn't fit with the other team that you're playing.
Yeah, I believe Buxton just got scratched for the Twins. Yeah, I think that's
looks like he did.
Yeah, he's out of there. So that certainly lowers interest in the Twins for me. I still do like Jefferson Correa at 1-2, but overall, obviously a less interesting stack with no Byron Buxton. Let's get to Pittsburgh and Chicago, Pirates and Cubs in Wrigley Field. Modest weather and wind blowing in. We need some good Wrigley wind games. Feels like we haven't had any for a long time. Hopefully coming soon, but not today. We'll play as a pitcher's park today for the right-handers Colin Rea and Mitch Keller. I believe you mentioned Rea as a potential cheap play, which makes sense to me at 6,300. Good matchup against the Pirates, and he's a decent enough pitcher in good weather to probably get the job done. So can't really push back on Rea too much. Don't think I'm using Mitch Keller, but honestly, I'm not really want to pay these price tags for the Cubs, who will be without Kyle Tucker in this one as well, which waters down that lineup. It's kind of a kind of a busted Sunday here. No Tucker, no Buxton, a lot of guys sitting out. Just that type of slate. But Bryce, what are you doing with Pirates and Cubs?
No bats for me here. You can play one-offs, 3-man's one-offs, 2-man type of deal. O'Neill plus anyone or just as a one-off, Cruz. And then, for the Cubs, probably like Heat and Hap, like PCA deal you can run on Keller. So it kind of makes me like PCA as a one-off a bit, but he's 6,100 and it's kind of hard to click him here. So I'm pretty far off this game hitting wise, pitching wise. I don't think Keller's the worst play. No Kyle Tucker in the lineup really does help him a bit. He's 7,100 in a Wrigley Wind in game. I don't mind that. And then I had mentioned Rhea as a cheap guy earlier. I think he's like safer than a Yuri Perez, in theory, but I don't really think, as we discussed, that he quite has the upside of him. So he'll be in my pool as well, likely around 10%, and then probably around 15 on Keller. Don't really like bats here.
Yeah, makes sense to me. And it does bring us to the last game of the slate. I was hoping, Bryce, that we might uncover some offenses that we like, but if anything, we've gone backwards. Buxton scratched, remove the Twins, and there just isn't a lot out there. But let's talk about it's kind of a bizarre slate. But let's talk
I think the Royals will probably come in as my second highest owned team just because of how cheap they are. And we mentioned like really liking some of the upside on a couple of those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do stacks, pitchers, all that after we talk about White Sox and Rangers. I do think the Rangers are one of the teams that at least has some upside here against Aaron Savale and the terrible White Sox bullpen. Looks like a pretty standard lineup for the Rangers. Smith, Langford, Seager, Semien, Carter, I think makes some sense. And then Kumar Rocker going for the Rangers pitching. I think you mentioned maybe some interest in him. I personally can't do it with Kumar Rocker. He's been dreadful all year long. I just don't see it. Bless you, Bryce. Fighting that sneeze over there. Good to get it out. But yeah, Rocker to me is behind Rhea. He's behind Yuri Perez, Griffin Canning. So no Rocker for me, but I get it against the White Sox. And then, I do like this Texas offense. Maybe my third favorite on the slate after the Braves and the Yankees. What say you, Bryce? What are you doing with White Sox and Rangers?
Sorry, I was muted there due to sneeze. I kind of looked at Rocker a bit more after I mentioned that he could be good, just because I had a decent projection on him, and I like manually lowered that.
Good idea.
Yeah, I actually don't hate like White Sox bats if you really want to go under the radar, even as like 2-mans. I just don't think he's any good, and they're pretty much free. Texas is not expensive either. I think Texas is probably going to be my third highest owned offense here. It's like Braves, and then Kansas City, them, and like the Yankees would probably round out kind of how I'm feeling about bats after doing the show.
I'm with you. Yeah. I think the Rangers make a lot of sense. And if you want to get contrarian, if you like if you want to pay for Wheeler and Gore or Fried, I do think that White Sox team makes some sense against Kumar Rocker, who, I think any offense could get to him. He's just prone to blow-ups, walks guys, gives up power, all that stuff. So White Sox, I do think, make at least a little bit of sense on this slate. Let's go back over pitching. Bryce, what's your preferred combination today? I do think there's a lot of different ways to reasonably play pitcher, but what are you looking at the most for your own lineups tonight?
I'm going to go with Holmes and then anyone else, but for the sake of this segment, Holmes and Kikuchi. I think kind of a weird pairing that can get you like off some of the chalkier options, like I'm playing a decent amount of Atlanta, so you got to get different. So I'll go with Holmes and Kikuchi.
That was going to be my answer too, which Holmes, Kikuchi, and a bunch of offenses we don't like doesn't sound super enticing here on this this Sunday morning. But
it's not really how I figured I'd wake up and spend my Sunday
Yeah.
mornings, but here we are.
Here we are doing our best. I'm in on those guys too. I'll throw in Max Fried, who is my favorite 10K plus pitcher for those wanting to spend up. He is my preferred option, but I'm with you. Somewhat reluctantly, Holmes and Kikuchi high on my list as well. Top 2 stacks, Bryce. Who are you looking at for stacking it up today?
So I'm just going to leave the Braves off this segment. After the Braves, my top 2 stacks would be Kansas City and then Texas.
Man, we are looking at a lot of the same stuff. I'm on the Braves and the Rangers as well. I do like, especially those top 2 bats for Kansas City. I'll throw in the Yankees, who I do think are in a pretty good spot in Fenway against Brian Bayo. All right, Bryce, give us a
note on that Texas stack for you watching. As soon as scratched, likely weren't playing a ton of him, but don't.
Who was scratched?
Osuna for the Rangers.
Okay. Yeah, mostly sticking to the top half of that lineup.
Yeah.
Good to know.
They're so cheap. They're so cheap. You don't really need to go down like dumpster diving towards the bottom.
100%. And yeah, Fried over Wheeler for me on this particular slate. Give us a home run call, Bryce, and we'll get on out of here.
Home run call. Let's try and find a lower owned guy here. I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with Mark Canha.
Mark Canha, not the answer I was anticipating, but I do like the call. I will go with, also scrolling down here, give me Ryan Jeffers leading off for the Twins against Brandon Walter. That makes, I think, some sense there at the catcher position as well. That'll do it for this show. Happy Father's Day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This show will be back for Game Log Mondays. Me, JT, and Big T. Always a fun show on Monday afternoon. I'm sure we'll see a bunch of you for that one. But everybody, enjoy your Sunday. He's Third and Schlong. I'm Draft Sheet. We're out of here.